So picture this, a marriage, 12 years long, it ends. The wife, she says it was a total nightmare, just filled with cruelty and torture. The husband, he says it was a normal, happy life. You've got two people, one life together, but two completely different stories. How on earth does a court figure out the truth? Well, this is the story of how the Indian Supreme Court essentially had to become a detective in a case that would change family law for decades.
Okay, so let's meet the people at the heart of this story. Deb Narayan Halder and Anushree Halder. They tied the knot back in 1985. For the next 12 years, they built a life, they lived in and around Calcutta, and they even raised a son together. But then, in 1997, that life just stopped. It came to a really abrupt end.
And this, right here, is where their private life just explodes into a very public battle. Anushree, the wife, she claims that those 12 years were nothing but a relentless cycle of abuse. But Deb Narayan, the husband, he paints a picture of a really supportive, happy partnership. I mean, that gap between their stories, it's huge. And the court had to somehow figure out which reality was the real one.
So you can see the problem, right? This puts the court in an unbelievably tough spot. How in the world do you dig through years of private moments, raw emotions, and serious accusations to find out what actually happened? That is the central mystery we're going to unravel today.
To get to the bottom of this, the court had to basically become a forensic accountant of their marriage, looking at every single claim and counterclaim. So let's put on our detective hats and start with the wife's side of things.
Now, the wife's entire case really hinges on this one incredibly serious claim. She alleged that just 2 weeks, 15 days into the marriage, her husband started torturing her, both mentally and physically. And why? Over her dowry and, she said, even her appearance. It's a horrible accusation that, if it's true, paints a really grim picture of their life together.
But then, the husband comes back with a completely different picture. He brought up things that seemed, well, normal. He showed that they took regular vacations to places like Shimla and Nainital, sometimes even with her family. He encouraged her to keep studying. And get this, she actually finished her Bachelor of Arts degree after they were married. He even set up financial accounts in her name, and, she admitted this herself, he would publicly praise her. It just doesn't quite add up, right? These actions don't really fit the profile of a constantly cruel and abusive husband.
And then, wow, a huge bombshell drops on the wife's story, and it came from her own star witness, her mother. When she was on the stand, under oath, her mom admitted that the husband had never, ever demanded dowry. You can imagine, this one statement just pulled the rug out from under the wife's main claim of cruelty.
And the timeline? Oh, the timeline was a total mess. And this slide shows you exactly why. The wife says the torture started within 15 days, but her mom says she didn't hear about any problems until 5 or 6 years into the marriage. And to make things even weirder, a police report the wife filed said she first told her parents after 8 years. You see the problem here? The numbers are all over the place. These timelines just don't match, and that raised huge red flags about the whole story. So with evidence this messy and contradictory, you can probably guess the legal system had a really hard time figuring this out. The path to a final verdict was, let's just say, a real roller coaster.
Okay, so round 1, the magistrate's court. They look at all this evidence in detail and they rule for the husband. But wait, it's not over. The wife appeals to the high court, which then completely flips the script and sides with her. So now you have 2 different courts looking at the exact same facts and coming to opposite conclusions. Everything was now riding on the Supreme Court.
So when the case gets to the Supreme Court, well, let's just say they were not impressed with the high court's work. They had this sharp, almost sarcastic comment saying the only good thing about the high court's judgment was that it was short. Ouch. Basically, they were saying the lower court hadn't bothered to explain why it was overturning the first court's detailed decision. This was a clear sign that the Supreme Court was about to do a much, much deeper dive.
And this is where things get really interesting. This is the breakthrough moment. The Supreme Court decided to use a powerful legal tool to cut right through all the noise of a he said, she said. They were going to look for one specific kind of proof to settle this once and for all.
And that magic bullet, it's something called contemporaneous evidence. It's actually a pretty simple but brilliant idea. It means that evidence is way more believable if it was created at the time something was happening, not months or years later after things have gone sour. Why? Well, because it shows what people were thinking and feeling in the moment, before they had time to change their stories.
So with this new lens, the Supreme Court basically went on a hunt. They started asking some tough questions. Okay, in 12 years, did this educated woman ever write a single letter to her family or friends complaining about what was happening? The answer? None. Did she file any police reports about this supposed torture before she decided to leave him? Again, none. The only report she ever filed was after the marriage had already fallen apart, which, the court found a lot less convincing.
So when you put it all together, the contradictions, the testimony from her own mother, and this complete lack of any real-time proof, the Supreme Court made its final call. It concluded that the wife just hadn't proven her claims of cruelty and torture, so in the eyes of the law, she had left the marriage on her own, without a good enough reason.
Okay, so you might be thinking, that's a sad story for one couple, but why are we talking about it today? Well, this wasn't just about one marriage. The Supreme Court's ruling here sent huge ripples through the entire legal system, setting up principles that are still incredibly important in family law.
For 22 years, that's right, 22 years, this single case has been a cornerstone of family law in India. It gets cited all the time in family courts, giving judges a powerful framework to use when they're trying to find the truth in these really bitter, messy disputes.
So what did it really change? It all boils down to these three massive principles. First, if you leave your marriage and then ask for financial support, you have to prove you had a good reason for leaving. Second, and this is the big one, contemporaneous evidence is king. Proof that was created during the marriage is way more powerful than anything you say after it's over. And third, if you're going to make serious claims, you need serious proof. Just saying it happened isn't enough.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question for our world today. I mean, this ruling was from 2003. That was before smartphones, before social media, before we were all communicating digitally all the time. So in our world of screenshots, texts, and DMs, has this idea of contemporaneous evidence become more important than ever? It just goes to show you how relevant a 22-year-old case can still be.